Hi, this is Lara at Elliott Wave Gold with your daily analysis for Tuesday, 5th of August. I'm recording the video now, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I was expecting upwards movement. I was expecting most likely to see a third wave up towards 1313. That's not what happened. Price moved a bit lower and mostly sideways to complete a very small green doji candlestick. I'm expecting that was a continuation of a second wave correction, and I'm still expecting it's most likely we're going to see a third wave up. Price needs to break above that pink trend line on the main hourly wave count. Once it manages to do that, then it should start to really increase in upward momentum. The target for the short term is 1310. If we see a new high above 1304.88, the alternate wave count will be discarded, and at that point I would have much more confidence in the main wave count. Let's have a look at the charts. The main wave count expects that primary wave 4 is getting very close to completion as a big regular contracting triangle. Within primary 4, we're within the final zigzag of intermediate wave E, subdividing 5, 3, and we need a complete 5 up. Just above 1345.22, minor wave C would reach slightly beyond the end of A to avoid a truncation, and it would be 0.618, the length of minor wave A. Intermediate wave E, the final subwave of the big triangle, can't move beyond the end of C, not even the tiniest fraction, above 1392.30. It's most likely that intermediate E will end comfortably short of the AC trend line, because that's the most common place for triangle subwaves to end. In all these three examples, that's exactly what happened. That's very common. The other possibility for intermediate wave E, if it doesn't end short of that trend line, is it could overshoot the trend line. If it does that, it may find resistance and end when it touches the upper edge of the big maroon channel, which I am copying over here from the weekly chart. I've drawn a channel around minor wave B down. When we see this as a 5 triangle for B and a short 5 for C, we draw the channel using Elliott's technique from the start of A to the end of the triangle for B, and then we place a copy on the end of A. In this instance, I've pushed it down a little. This upper pink trend line I'm copying over to the hourly chart is showing us very nicely where upwards movement is finding very strong resistance. It needs to break through resistance on that pink trend line, and once it does that, we should see an increase in upward momentum. Let's have a look at how this looks on the hourly chart, with the end of the triangle up here is this point up here. Here's the final C wave down for minor B, and we have 1 and 2 did continue further sideways and lower as a double zigzag. I had expected it was really likely to be over here. It was about 0.618, the length of the first wave, and it was a complete zigzag, a most typical looking second wave. But that's not what happened. It's moved lower as a double zigzag. I think for my mini wet wave 2, that really has to be it. It really should be over today. So I've moved the invalidation point up. Sub mini wet wave 2 may not be over. It most certainly could move lower, and if it does, it can't move beyond the start of 1 below 1282.55. I've adjusted the base channel around mini wet waves 1 and 2. The third wave should have the power to break above resistance at the upper edge of that channel, and along the way up, downward corrections should find support at the lower green trend line. This is the pink trend line, which I've copied over from the daily chart, and this is where upward movement is finding strong resistance. Once this little second wave correction is complete, and it most certainly could move lower to be a more obvious three-wave structure on the hourly chart, once it's done, the next move up should be a third wave of a third wave, and that should have enough power to break above the strong resistance price is finding at this trend line. Once it does that, we should see upward momentum increase. And another little bit of resistance, another correction within our third wave might happen when price finds resistance at this trend line. At 1310, mini wet wave 3 will reach 1.618, the length of mini wet wave 1, and I'll have full confidence with price movement above 1304.88, because at that point the alternate will be discarded. This is the alternate idea, which sees minor wave B as incomplete. Instead of a triangle for minute b ending here, it's possible it was a more brief, sharp zigzag over here, and minute wave C is an ending contracting diagonal. And the big problem with this wave count is much of minute wave C, especially on the hourly chart, is comfortably outside of the channel, which is drawn around this downward zigzag using Elliott's technique. If the B wave ends here, then we draw the channel from the start of A to this high here, because this is where B ends, and then we place a parallel copy down on the end of A, or in this case I've pushed it out a bit further. It's the problem with this upper trend line which substantially reduces the probability of this wave count. Of all the markets I've analysed over the years, gold has the most typical looking Elliott wave structures, and its structures almost always fit quite nicely into normally drawn channels using Elliott's technique. This correction most certainly does not. It's very atypical. I've not seen a correction for gold sit so far out of its channel like this one, so it's very unusual. It has a low probability. At 1273.50, minute wave C would reach equality in length with minute wave A. So this wave count allows for a new low, but only a slight new low and one very final short little fifth wave down. That would see minor wave B complete, and we'd still be looking for minor C up to move at least slightly beyond the end of A to avoid a truncation and to complete the zigzag for intermediate wave E. Let's have a look at how this looks on the hourly chart, where the end of minuet 2 up here within the ending contracting diagonal is this point up here, and here's the upper edge of the pink channel for the alternate copied over here to the hourly chart, and you can see just how much of minute wave C sits outside that channel, how unusual this looks. Within an ending diagonal, all of the subwaves may only subdivide as single zigzag structures. It's the only time you're ever going to see a third wave labelled as anything other than an impulse. So within this ending diagonal, we have the zigzag for the third wave. The zigzag for the fourth wave is still probably incomplete. We only need the final zigzag down for the fifth wave once minuet 4 is done. The final fifth wave is most likely to move at least slightly below the end of the third wave to avoid a truncation, but technically it doesn't have to. It's most likely it's not going to be truncated though. That's a bit unusual for ending diagonals. 1273.5, the final fifth wave may find support at the lower green 1-3 trend line, and I'd expect it to touch that trend line and most likely end there. Within the fourth wave zigzag at 1300, the C wave would reach equality in length with the A wave. When the fourth wave is done, the final fifth wave down should begin. The fourth wave should not be longer than equality with the second wave. Because the third wave is shorter than the first wave, the diagonal must be contracting. The fourth wave should not be longer than equality with the second wave, because then the diagonal would be neither contracting nor expanding. So if the fourth wave moves to higher than equality with the second wave, above 1304.88, this alternate would be very firmly discarded. The probability of it would be ridiculously low. It should not be considered. The rule for the end of a fourth wave of a diagonal is it should overlap into first wave price territory, but it can't move beyond the end of the second wave above 1312.28. But I'd discard this wave count well before the invalidation point is passed. I'd discard it after the maximum length for the fourth wave is passed. That's all from me today with your gold analysis, and I hope that all our members are having a fabulous day.